Hello, 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 everyone. Hope you are all having a great week so far. Welcome to another episode of Narad News. So, today we are going to talk about shovels and not the shovels that are needed in your garden or maybe in a farm or a field. We are going to talk about the shovels which are needed to power AI. Now, this is a topic that I have discussed on this channel quite a bit, and JD and I have also discussed on the Wasted Wanderers podcast. So please go check those out as well for more context on what these shovels actually are. Just for a quick recap, a shovel is anything that basically helps something come to life. It's the fuel that drives technology. So this comes from the gold rush, where the people who were finding the gold were becoming rich, but also the people who established shovel companies at that time, they also became extremely bloody rich. So today we are going to talk about utilities and electricity. Essentially, this is one of the shovels which are needed to make this whole AI just tick. This is a news article from the Wall Street Journal. So, soaring spending plans by 51 investor owned utilities will help patch up the aging power grid and meet rising electricity demand for AI. This is a report that has been compiled. So there are two main issues that are coming to a head at the same time. One is you need to replace infrastructure that is already getting old. On top of that, you have this behemoth in the room called AI that basically wants more and more electricity. So if the thumbnail wasn't obvious enough, I'm just reiterating that. So going into this a bit, looks like $1.4 trillion will be spent over the next 5 years. This is based on a report by Powerlines. This is a consumer education group. This is up 20% from a year ago when the estimated spend was going to be $1.1 trillion, right? This could mean ominous news for consumers. So what happens is, I can speak a little bit about Canada. So in Canada, all the electricity is basically government-driven companies. Is provided by government-driven companies, and I think most, if not all, of Canada's electricity is through hydroelectric. So here we literally call it hydro bill. We don't even call it electricity bill. What happens is, for any project that they want to undertake, there is a parent body that decides whether the cost of that project can be passed to the consumers or not. US has a much higher private sector footprint, but this is also highly regulated by the government, in the sense that every big electricity provider is, given their area of supply. It's all managed on, okay, only this company will provide in this area, so on and so forth. They are responsible for the infrastructure. So if I had to make a sensible guess, it would be that, okay, they have to get some sort of an approval, or maybe a nod, a wink, a nudge from the government saying that, okay, you can pass this on to the consumers, right? Now, electricity cost increases are outpacing many other types of inflation. So the latest data is showing 4.6% in March from the year before, and overall prices have risen 3.3%. So the difference is 1.3%, which is about 30% more. And that's a very significant amount. Now, you guys are watching this live. You guys are using cell phones. You guys are, without electricity, our lives will probably not last 15 minutes, 30 minutes. Now you can tell me that, oh, what if my devices are fully charged? Fine, you have the best MacBook Pro, it'll last you 18 hours just on video playback. Cool. That's still less than a day, right? So it's definitely one of the core utilities. Now, Alabama, they have recently frozen electricity rates for regulated utilities till 2029. Indiana regulators are touring the state to hear from utility customers about energy affordability. So it looks like they're carrying out some sort of a survey. And President Trump himself has mused on social media that Americans should never have to pay higher electricity bills because of data centers. I like the intent behind the statement. I like that President Trump, the administration, and the state level administrations, at least a few of them, are thinking about what it means for the consumer to have these massive data centers just sucking electricity like behemoths. Neither political party seems to have a track record at the national level on this topic historically. These are the words of Charles Hua. He is the executive director of Powerlines, who has carried out this survey. Let me put my 2 cents on this, right? Oh, move. Why won't this move to the next one? There we go. The Max 7, which includes your usual suspects. Let me move to the next one. Why not? These are the Max 7 companies, right? You have your Google, Nvidia, Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, Apple, and I've probably forgotten one, but I guess that's Netflix. So Google, Meta, and Microsoft, and of course Nvidia, they are central to the AI revolution. And of course you have all the other AI companies which are semi-startups at this point, with OpenAI, Anthropic, all of these companies planning to go public later this year. And of course Tesla is one of them, or the whole Musk empire, if you will. These are the biggest contributors to AI. These companies make up close to 36% of the S&P 500. It is very difficult to say no to 36% of the market, that we will not allow you to use as much electricity you need so that you can power the data centers, which are essentially in a large part fueling the growth of the US at this point. This is a very harsh reality in one sense, because it comes as a catch-22. On one hand, if the progress of AI is slowed down in any way, then what about the millions of people who rely on these tools to make their jobs faster, to make their work happen faster. I can give my own example. Recently, just today, we finished off a proposal uh, for a company for our products, and a part of it was, talking about the team that we would bring to the table to help them, implement the software or whatever. And I had to collect detailed profiles of 10 people or so, and then pick the right ones, put summaries in, all the beautiful things that happen in a proposal. We had to do all of this in basically 5 pages. That was the limit put by the client. You cannot exceed 5 pages. Now, for a 5-page proposal, I would typically just try and get it done by myself. It's just too short to engage someone else. Now, for me to be able to read 10 profiles, summarize them, put them in 50 words, 100 words, whatever, and just have them ready, I need to use AI, especially with the timelines that we are expected to work these days. So if AI were to stop tomorrow, again, extreme hypothetical scenario, I know for a fact my work will be hampered. Forget about work for a minute. This channel will slow down. I use AI to create thumbnails. I use AI to come up with, give me some suggestions on a catchy title, and then I'll tweak it, make it sort of aligned with the theme of the channel, etc. I don't want to make it too clickbaity. I don't want to be one of those channels as well. So I'll always tweak it, but just having an LLM help me out up front, it does help me reduce the amount of time to production. That's why I can come live twice a week on this channel and then once a week with JD on Wasted Wanderers. Now this takes me to a great segue, guys. On this channel, we are running a mission. Let's get to 50 subscribers by the end of April. I know maybe it's a lot to ask everyone, but very, very thankful for all the love that we have been receiving so far. Let's continue the journey. Please spread the message. Do like, share, and subscribe. Back to scheduled programming. So it goes without saying, I'll just wrap this one up, that it's very difficult to say no to 40% of the market. Yeah, no, we won't help you with your shovels. Let's put a little more perspective to this. I hope this changes as fast as I want. Yeah, so this is from Vanguard. This is the US economic forecast for 2026. GDP growth 2.3%. This is real GDP growth, so inflation's been stripped off. If you had to do a back of the envelope calculation, if the max 7 is 36%, 40% odd, you are looking at about 0.8% of this growth coming from that concentrated segment of the market, max 7. I'm not saying that from the rest of the 493 that there won't be any winners. There are certainly companies which you cannot live without. You'll have your oil companies, you will have your companies like, Procter & Gamble, Kimberly-Clark, Coke, Pepsi. They're not going anywhere. Costco, Walmart. They're definitely not going anywhere, but are they going to give you the massive returns that a stock like Palantir might? Or when the IPO happens, maybe OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, Meta, Amazon. So it's always very difficult for any government, not just the US government, to come and say that, you know what, we need to slow this down just because utility bills are going to go up. I'm not saying the utility bills going up is the right thing, especially since wages have not kept up with the crazy rise in cost of living, housing. I live in Canada, so I mean, I understand your plight, Americans, with housing, but if you try the Canadian market sometime, if you want to buy a house, um, I might actually just do a comparative study on where the prices have actually increased on a a proportionate basis. So I totally get the pain, but then I look at my portfolio, and I'm guessing a lot of you as well. You have stocks of these companies, and if they start performing poorly, ultimately, one way or the other, we all feel the pain. Either in the form of an increased electricity bill or in the form of a poorly performing portfolio. It's always easy to get carried away by a catchy headline and then realize, okay, there is a flip side to the coin. And these stocks are sitting in my 401k, in my RRSP, in my TFSA, whatever, IRA, all these fancy acronyms, right? So moving down a bit, apart from your, you need maintenance, and then AI needs more and more energy, there is of course electric vehicles that are exploding on the scene in some form or the other. And then of course the residential markets, more housing constructions, even more commercial places being constructed in what you could call tier 2, tier 3 cities all across the country. And that's also going to obviously put a pressure on the existing grids. Now, most of the US gets some sort of is prone to some sort of a natural phenomenon. Your hurricanes in Florida, your snowfall in the Northeast, forest fires in California. So unfortunately, a large part of at least the bottom 48 are always, affected by something or the other. That also periodically causes shocks to the grid. I think that's a pretty obvious one at this point. There's an important statement made in this article. Let me show you guys this one. Yeah. It raises the structural question of what is necessary. So we are getting into prioritization. And this is one of the trickiest things to deal with when you have so many conflicting interests at your table. And this is from the government's perspective, right? Let's definitely do that so that the grid doesn't break. So I would personally feel that maintenance and upkeep will be the top priority so that what's being promised is being delivered. I know there is legislation coming out, or at least there is talks of legislation coming out that, not all of the electricity demands of a data center has to go through the grid. The companies building these data centers will have to figure out their own power sources. And of course, they are doing that. I think the biggest data center owned by X is in Texas, and they have their own power plant. There's actually stories on how whatever the input to this power plant is, it stinks a lot in the area and whatnot. But at least there is an effort to say, okay, we will be genuine members of the community, and we will not mooch off the grid so that everyone gets their fair share as well. Now, of course, if a law comes in, companies would have to follow it. Or if they don't follow it, could they maybe use an outsourcing model? We never know. Of course, there's a lot of tricky things when it comes to who should have the data, where it should sit. That becomes way more complicated and beyond the scope of this topic. But it could just, hopefully not, but it could come across as another opportunity for companies to outsource. Okay, I can build a data center cheaper over there. Why don't I just do that? I have the Patriot Act that protects me anyway. I don't know. This is hypothetical. I have no way of proving it. Just throwing it out there, right? Now, yeah. Hua has also said that increases in capital spending don't necessarily lead to rate increases. Avoiding price increases for consumers will require diligent utility commissioners who scrutinize spending plans and push for the grid to be used more efficiently. I don't think any utility commissioner will have a wrong intent when they try to assess should this lead to a rate increase or not. But just going back to what I was mentioning earlier, you do not refuse 40% or close to 40% of your market their shovels. This will be a very nuanced balancing act. And for the next 5 years, the US and all the other countries who are serious about having their own AI models in any way, training their own models, releasing it for public usage, they will have to walk a very thin line because people are honestly pissed with the rising cost of living, right? Something tangential that I wanted to connect with, and this will of course lead to, a whole macroeconomic talk, but it looks like this is data from 2024, electricity generation sources, US, coal 16%, close to it, natural gas 42, nuclear 18, give or take, hydropower 6. And then you have your wind and your solar PV about 16. Now, it's very interesting that natural gas is sitting at 42%. One of the biggest suppliers of natural gas all over the world is Qatar. They have obviously faced a big hit on their natural gas producing facilities, which has obviously had an upward impact on the price. US itself is a huge producer of natural gas. So I would say, at least from that one perspective, it's pretty well covered. I'm not sure how much of its own natural gas it uses to produce its own electricity. I would be happy to be educated on that. So if you have any of that data, do drop it in the comments. But the other non-trivial part is the coal, which is at 16%. And that's a fossil fuel that we still need it. Let's put it this way. There's no, I don't see coal going away. We can't wish it away in any way. Now, utility, let's look at this. The report found, so this report that the agency has put out is saying that the regulators approved 64% of utility spending requests between 2021 and 2025, a signal that consumers should brace for near-term price increases. So I think I've kind of beaten this point a fair bit that, yeah, you just don't refuse shovels. Utility revenue increase requests last year were higher than at any point since the mid-1980s. I don't think this comes as a particular shock. Again, this whole AI race is going parallelly with the demand for utilities. Half of the proposed spending from the 51 utilities would go towards upgrading the transmission system, much of which is decades old. So if we are saying about half of it just goes in upkeeping the transmission systems, I think there is space for primary research to be done in how to just make electricity transfer more efficient, and maybe for some batshit crazy idea like electricity being transmitted wirelessly. Now, this is getting into the realm of conspiracy theories, but it is said that Nikola Tesla had actually figured it out uh, before he died. I don't know if any of this is true. Um, this topic was sort of briefly showed in Nolan's Prestige. There was I think they had something to do with wireless electricity, and then that concept was, propagated to literally making a clone. I forgot the movie, it's been a while. But I think we are in a time, especially globally, not just the United States, that there needs to be just some batshit crazy invention in the world of electricity, because AI or not, demand is going to keep increasing. The reason for that is the global population is set to increase till about at least the mid of this century, even beyond that. And after that, it's going to go down and then, settle down by the end of the century at a reasonable number. That's what my understanding is. If demand, another important point from this article, if demand decreases in the future of or anticipated AI projects don't materialize as expected, other customers worry they could end up footing the bill for stranded assets. This is always a tug of war that happens when a technology is receiving so much hype. Now, recent news in the LLM world on how well they are performing seems to be saying that there is some sort of a wall being reached when it comes to the efficiency of LLMs as we know it. I want to repeat, as we know it. There is no way to know if there is cutting edge research being done which could radically increase the performance levels. My 2-3 cents on this is, okay, there can be some new way that you could think of a neural network which could make LLMs perform a lot better with a lot lesser energy. The second one could be, okay, quantum computing gets to a point where you can use it to train your models. Right now, quantum computing is just not there. There are some edge use cases in the space of hyper optimization where you can use quantum solutions, but overall you cannot use it as a regular computer to train LLMs or neural networks rather. So if quantum sort of catches up to that point, suddenly you have a whole different way and a much more efficient way to train your networks, because the basic of quantum is you can have any state between 0 and 1, which makes it have much more possible solutions, and you're basically not restricted by the binary nature of modern day computing. But if for any reason any of these things don't materialize, you'll be stuck with a set of assets that no one has any use for. And of course, then you're selling for scraps, and that in itself can trigger some sort of a market meltdown. Having said that, we are also dealing with a war in the Middle East. We are also, of course, it's not in the news as much anymore, but Russia and Ukraine still not the best of friends. Overall, I'll just go back to JD and I had started on the Wasted Wanderers podcast saying not so happy new year, and I think more and more we're kind of seeing signs of that coming together, that there's just too much pressure on the overall system from too many points. So yeah, let's just brace tight for the rest of this year. And I think a positive way to look at this would be that, okay, we reach some sort of a bottom. The only place you can go is up from here. All right, guys, this is Abi signing off for the day. And yeah, see you guys tomorrow on Wasted Wanderers. And do like, share, and subscribe. And yeah, let's get to 50 by the end of April. Ciao.